Welcome to SIP episode 80, Cellar Angels SIP educational series. Tonight, we're talking about the impact of drought on winemaking. Here is a family that we're going to introduce you to that actually does soil mapping, where they will map the soil to a particular rootstock. And we're going to talk all about how adequate water supplies can impact the vine's growth and the final product. A lot of things we cover. There's a lot to unpack. Stay tuned and enjoy this episode of SIP. Thanks so much for all your support. I am thrilled to be here this evening because we have, in my opinion, one of the greatest wine families in all of Napa Valley. And for those of you that don't know, my name is Martin Cody, co-founder of Cellar Angels. Cellar Angels is a direct-to-consumer wine company, a virtual curator of the fine wines from Napa and Sonoma. 90-some-odd% of the time, these wines are not in distribution nationally, and you can only get them from the winery or via the Cellar Angels website. There's over 1,000 wineries in Napa and Sonoma, and about 75 to 85% of them produce under 10,000 cases, and very few have national distribution. It's our job to give them a very elegant educational platform to showcase their fantastic products to you. It's your job to buy them. So without much further ado, I want to say hello to Bill Black, Chad Angelo again, Ivy, Jeff and Jane Greasy, Jim Brubaker, Karen Athanas, Catherine Jerica, Linda Forsyth, Lori Potme. I'm joking. Lori Potomi. Peter Glick is here. I know we're not supposed to say last names. YouTube can come after me. Newsmaster Wine, Rhode Island. By the way, I talked to Brian Kaplan. Thank you for that tip. That'll be interesting. Very excited. Without much further ado, let's get to the Rahn family of Rahn Estates. And I'm going to start and have them introduced, because when I say they've got everything, you've got a certified soil specialist, you have a viticulturist, and you have a winemaker, all at the table and all in the family. So Brian, talk to us, say hello, cheers to everybody. And thank you so much for spending your Friday night with us. Good to see everyone again.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well. And we're glad to be here and talk to everyone. So my background is I am a soil scientist and agronomist and a vineyard consultant. We do two things or three things. We farm vineyards, we have a vineyard. I have a consulting company where I go and test soils and help make vineyard design maps by matching the soils to the rootstocks and helping people manage their vineyards that way and design them properly. So, and then of course we've got the wine company. So primarily, I'm a soil scientist and what they call a vigneron, a person that grows wine grapes and makes wine.
And so, and before I get to Dylan and Hannah, a certified soil specialist or soil scientist?
A certified professional soil scientist.
See, I was unaware that had a degree. I'm impressed by that. Did you lose a bet and have to pursue that major?
Well, not quite. Well, going through college, I think the college journey is to learn what you want to be. People that go to college and know what they want to be always scared me. I figured, how do you know that? You're just getting out of high school. I mean, geez, you don't know anything getting out of high school. No offense, high schoolers, but you don't. So the college journey for me was, what do I want? What do I want to do? And I bounce around. I love the sciences. I love mathematics. I know what kind of mind does that, and chemistry and things. But engineering, I was looking at engineering, and I loved engineering for the math. But during a nice day, I was looking out the window. I just wanted to be outside. So I knew that I did not belong indoors. I'm firmly convinced there are two types of people: those of us who live outside and love it, and the people inside looking at us out the window saying those guys are idiots. But that's who we are. If you're an outdoor person, I needed an outdoor job, and I love the science aspect of it. So that's what got me into soils specifically. There was quite a bit of science to it. So it scratched that.
Absolutely. All right, Dylan, your turn. Now I know that Dad pursued a career in dirt and the study of it, and certainly to grow wine. How did you get into becoming a viticulturist?
Well, hi guys, I'm Dylan. I wanted to go into grape growing basically because I grew up in vineyards following him around. I always found it fascinating. There's all kinds of really interesting people that are involved in viticulture, and learning how to grow great wine is a challenge. Every year is different. Every year you have different issues that you're dealing with. And when I got out of high school, I pursued it in college. I ended up getting a degree in it and earned it, and came back and worked for various different vineyard management companies, picking up a couple of different tips and tricks on how to really get the best quality that you can and learn from the best, as I've landed back working with Dad again.
And when you learn tips and tricks, how much of your learning and education in viticulture is trial and error?
I'd say a lot of it is learning from being willing to listen to the older guys in the fields. They've seen a lot of it. So the educational side gives me the basis for understanding how things work, how chemistry works, why the plants are working the way that they do. And I'd say in the field gives you the rough hands, if you will. You work with the shovels, you're in the ground, you're putting the plants in, you're working with the trellis, and you're seeing how and why different things work with tractors or not. So it's the combination of science and physicality is what I really love about it.
Awesome. And so Hannah, apparently that only left one other job to do.
Yeah, it's funny, when my dad was saying, how do people know what they want to do, coming straight out of high school? They're crazy, but actually Dylan and I both knew what we wanted to do coming out
We're
of
the
high
crazy
school.
ones,
So
apparently.
I guess, that makes us a little crazy. But yeah, we found a passion at a very young age. I like working outside. I think that's fun and all, but yeah, I like air conditioning too. The science of winemaking, of course, like it piqued my interest. And then I think a lot of winemakers like the art aspect, being able to make a craft, see something through to the end and kind of make it your own. And so I definitely fell in love more with winemaking, which, I know viticulture plays a huge role in, and I'm thankful to have two really great vineyard people on my team. So yeah, after high school, pursued an enology degree, hopped around, did some internships, one down in New Zealand, and now here I am making our family's wine, and I think doing a pretty good job.
She's doing a fantastic job. And
I think so as well. And do you, Hannah, making the family wine, and obviously the name is on the bottle.
Yeah.
So the crest is there, the R is there, and I don't think the R is for really good. I think it's for Rahn Estate. But do you feel added pressure because it is the family name on the bottle and you have to make certain that it's good? I mean, do you feel all that when you're producing the wine?
I feel all that when I make anybody's wine, actually. My name's behind it, whether it's on the bottle or not. But there's definitely, a higher sense of pride for my family's wine. I mean, I want our wines to shine above the rest. Yeah, I do.
Good. And this, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the unspoken people that's here is my sister's husband, Francisco, is a cellar hand. That's the cellar master that's overseeing it. So he's not here, but he's here in spirit. So
awesome. Good. And I know that this episode, we're going to be talking about drought. And here's an actual picture of a reservoir not too far from you guys in Oroville. And it is, we see some of these signs periodically, but when we don't live there and when we don't experience drought to the degree of that you all do, and especially because many of us are not in vocations that drought impacts our day-to-day livelihood and our day-to-day income. Bryan, how do you measure drought in wine country?
Well, we have a Mediterranean climate, and with that climate, we get most of our rainfall in the winter. So in the winter months, I would say at least 80–90% of it. So for us to gauge drought, if we go through the winter months, we can come in to February or March, and if our rain totals are far below what our average is, and we're measuring our soil moisture, and our soil moisture is low, then we know that we are in a drought, and we're not going to get much rain in April, all the way from April or May through harvest. So if we don't have it then, we're not going to get it, and we have to supply it ourselves, and we have to pre-irrigate at that point. So we actually start applying water to fill up the soils in advance of the long, warm summer.
And I would imagine, Dylan, on a viticultural standpoint, as an impact on the vines, that 1 year potentially of low water, you have a reservoir or something that you can pull from. But then if you have extended drought and the reservoir is going dry, which is what we're hearing a lot about, then what happens, and how devastating is that to the vineyard?
Well, the biggest challenge is always trying to keep the grapevines in balance. So, during the first year, you're reducing the fruit load, you're changing how you're not necessarily changing, but you're adjusting the canopy size to what the vine can actually handle. Grapevines are naturally over vigorous, and so that's our job to kind of keep them in balance for what they can actually ripen and get good quality out of. So the first year is basically just, okay, let's see what we have, let's see how we survive. The second year is going, okay, we really need to focus on where our trouble spots are, make sure they're getting the limited water that we do have. So that's, fixing the irrigation or maintaining that in another level or running secondary poly. And additionally, just reducing the overall length of canes as we go through to do tying to the cord line.
Interesting. And Bryan, you mentioned earlier soil mapping, and Dylan, you just mentioned after a year or so, there might be some trouble spots. And in the Midwest, you can see trouble spots very easily in a cornfield. And I don't know if it's on the hill and stuff like that, or a soybean field where one row is not doing well. And it could be moisture and drought specific, but oftentimes you see this in years when the moisture is fine. And my guess is that that's where the soil mapping comes in, because there must be some sort of nutrient variation there that doesn't allow those plants in that particular area to do well. And you can almost see it every year. From a soil mapping standpoint, is that what you test and bring to the vineyard to make certain, that the soil is going to be able to produce the vines that you want to produce in a healthy format?
Yes, and one word answer is yes, that's exactly what we do. And that is part of soil mapping, because, terroir is soils, primarily soils and climate. So we can test the soils with using resistivity, and we know where things change. We make a resistivity map out of it. So we know where the rocky soil is, where the deep loam soils are, where the soil units are. Then we plant, or in our clients, we help our clients do the same thing, plant the correct rootstocks in the correct soil type. So if you do have a shallow, droughty soil, you put in a rootstock that's a cut that tolerates those conditions. You have a deeper soil here, you put a different rootstock there, and you separate each of your irrigation and fertigation systems to farm that particular soil type. And that's what I tell my clients. We don't farm vineyard blocks that are squares or rectangle. We farm soil types, and sometimes they're amoeboids. They are these strange shapes, and you try to make some nice curves out of them. But the world has curves, thank goodness. And that's how we do it.
So when you see these vineyard blocks that are perfect squares, chances are they are not soil mapping to the degree that they could, which leads me to another question. When you find in the soil mapping in a particular vineyard block, when the soil changes and you know of another rootstock a foot away that's going to do better, and that soil, you'll change rootstocks in that vineyard block?
Yes. Well,
that's like a mad scientist.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we will take it to that level. We will break out subblocks. We will do that. Yes, that's
how many different rootstocks could you have in a vineyard?
Oh,
I mean, I guess the answer is unlimited, but how many within reason?
Typically, I'd say about 5 or 6 is typically is normally what we'll do on plantings. Sometimes more than that if they're big plantings. And there's kind of a top 10, I would say, that are more popular than the others, and they're still breeding more. And as water gets more, as water resources get tighter, and we are pursuing that diligently. And my goal is to plant a vineyard, loosen the soil, and have it need as little water as possible and come into balance. That's part of my job as a soil scientist and as a vigneron.
Well, and I'll put up a poll question here because Bryan has clients all up and down the valley, and you can imagine when these folks are buying, vineyard acres, it's not an inexpensive investment. And for someone who says, "Oh no, I think I'm going to put Merlot in here," and Bryan has to tell them, "No, you're not, because Merlot's not going to grow here." But he has some very large clients, and one of them you've heard of. All of you have heard of it. And I'll read the questions that you guys I know are far away. One of Bryan's clients for soil mapping is Sutter Home, maker of White Zinfandel. White Zinfandel is, and this is a multiple choice question, A, a dry white wine, B, a medium sweet rosé wine, C, dry rosé wine, D, medium white wines, E, will never cross my lips again. You can pick more than one answer. It is multiple choice.
I don't think so.
They're doing it. They
So I got.
Yeah, you guys can answer. You know the answer.
That's right.
Can I go with the funny one?
Panelists can't answer.
Hannah, you're not allowed to answer.
Oh, I thought you said cut.
No, I know. See, you see why winemakers never listen.
I'm sensing a familiar theme here among the struggle. All right. Answers are all over the board. I like 5 people did answer. It's never going to cross my lips again, which by the way, would imbibe that you actually, it has crossed your lips for at least one time. I think we all have had Sutter Home White Zin at one point in time or another. But yes, the answer is, anybody want to guess on the Rahn family?
Medium sweet white wines.
Yeah. Rosé.
Medium sweet white wines. Correct. So whoever had medium sweet white wines and will never cross my lips again, the 6th person here. Yeah, exactly. Jeff and Jane, we assume all panelists know the answers. And by the way, Jeff and Jane were this week's winner of the email quiz that came out on Monday that talked about the offspring of Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc. So we would like to thank Jeff and Jane for playing. The new car, they won a car, but it's currently off Long Beach offshore, and the supply chain has limited the delivery of that car. So we apologize, and we'll look into that. All right, so Hannah, we've got perfectly mapped soil at the estate that you get to make wine from, because Bryan purchased the farm or the vineyard specifically for this soil. And you have a brother that is learning from the pros in the fields that have been out there for decades. And then you get an enologist degree and winemaking degree. And now you have to make the wine. I'm going back to the nerve-wracking aspect of that. And especially with the drought aspect of that, how early in the growing season do they come to you and say, okay, this year is going to be lean, or this year is going to be, a lot of vigor, a lot of fruit, and how much of that factors into your decision making with regards to what goes on in the fermentation process, the press, and everything else?
Well, I would say we talk about what the yield is going to be like pretty early on. Just kind of collaborate. What things are looking like. By berry set practically. And in terms of how that impacts winemaking, is a little, we know that with drought, we're probably going to see some dehydration out there, which when it comes to the winery means that we're probably going to make a water add. And that's kind of the biggest curveball that winemakers will see is it's really about balancing the dehydration and flavors and making sure that you found the right sweet spot of those. You don't want them to turn into raisins and you get those really raisiny kind of off-putting flavors, but you also want to make sure that the flavors have time to develop without shriveling away. So it's a bit of a balance, and so we walk and taste together and kind of make those calls together.
Yeah, really closely at harvest. That's when we're just basically out there probably every other day, just doing a quick taste test and seeing how it's progressing and seeing if they're moving in that direction, or if there are hot spots like we talked about that are going to start to, we're going to lose the fruit there. That's when it's like, okay, that little zone we're going to need to pick sooner than later. So that way we don't lose the fruit, we don't lose quality, and we don't have problems like that.
We have small lots. We pick by soil types and by ripeness. So we pick a patch over here, a patch over there, and a patch, then we make it into a blend. You had mentioned, Hannah, something about pH and TA this year that was unusual because of the drought. So I'm going to ask that question.
Okay, this is a little nerdy, but so not only am I the winemaker here for my family and the consulting winemaker, but I also am a lab manager at an analytical lab here in Napa. So I kind of have a unique opportunity to see a bunch of different wines and a bunch of different juices come in and see the chemistries as they progress or just as they're coming off the analyzers. And one trend that we've seen this year in regards to drought and has happened in previous years is the relationship between pH and TA. So usually when you've got a high TA, sorry.
What's TA?
Total acidity. So how much acid there is in a wine.
That was more for the audience than me.
Yeah.
Sorry. So typically when you see with a pH scale, the higher the acid, the lower the pH. But in this year and years previous with droughts, you actually see wines that have higher TA and higher pH. And why exactly that is, not exactly certain, but it is a trend that we continue to keep seeing, and it's very interesting. And we have clients that kind of call us up or email us and go, "Can you recheck that? That just isn't tracking." And we'll do, and we will, and that's how the cookie crumbles there. So it is something that winemakers should be aware of, especially when they're looking at doing any type of acid adds. Maybe you've got some bound acid in those sugars. And just kind of be a little conservative on both of those. Same thing with alcohol conversions from sugar to alcohol. This year in particular, we've seen a lower conversion rate. There is a swing every year, but this year has been a little bit lower than normal. And so again, conservative adds when you're seeing drought, I think is important and smart.
Interesting. And someone had a question with regards to, Bryan, when you purchased the property, did your property come with any water rights, or do they even have that out there as far as water rights?
No, we had no water rights there, and we had to drill a well. And then the last time I told this story, you asked me if I was taking psychedelic drugs.
And let the record reflect. Let the record reflect. Bryan refused to answer.
No, you said something a product of the '60s, and I said I thought maybe I suffered from tie-dye poisoning or something of that nature. But no, there wasn't. There was no water there, and I bought the property on the off chance that there on what I thought there could be water. It was contingent. Okay, what we used, the contract was contingent upon hitting a well. The first well that we tried to dig collapsed, and we almost left the property and left it, but no, lo and behold, we pushed on, and we did hit water with our second attempt. And when you drill a well, you take a bass boat and you just throw it right in the ground, and you never get it back, but unless you hit water. So we took a second bass boat and threw it at the ground and hit water.
Nice. And so no water rights. And so I'm already hearing you do the soil mapping. So you're mapping specific rootstock to the soil that it's going to go well with that rootstock, because you've been studying this, you have a degree in it, you've been doing it for 25, 30 or more years. You do multiple picks. And so it was interesting, Dylan, what you said, where you can be walking through the vineyards as you're getting closer, and one might be lean. And do you have the ability on those lean sections? And I know it's probably not more than 20 to 30 vines. Do you have the ability to push the accelerator on watering them, or some are too vigorous? Do you have the ability to take your foot off the gas and dial things back? I mean, how do you control that balance in drought years from a moisture need standpoint?
The easiest way that we go about that is running a secondary irrigation line. And we basically will go out with guys and crews and we'll put out secondary poly is what it's called. And with these lines, we'll punch emitters on vines that are usually problem children. And so the vigorous spots won't have any emitters and the problem children will. So the challenging spots will be getting water when we're irrigating, and that brings it more or less into balance, is the side that needs water badly and the side that doesn't, move along and eventually reach ripeness at the same time.
And can the problem child ever grow up and become a productive member of society, of the vineyard?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yes.
Yes,
they can.
Awesome. I love it. All right, I'm going to go to our second poll question because I think we're going to be turning cameras on in a little bit. And this one is germane to the topic at hand. Which environmental factor generates energy in the vine to produce sugars to grow and ripen grapes? Carbon dioxide, nutrients, sunlight, or water? There were no trick answers on this one. I see a couple of herd followers. Wow. All right, I'm going to stop the poll right there because for the first time in game show history, everyone has picked the correct answer. So that means you get a car, you get a car. Everyone look underneath your seat. Everyone look underneath your seat. Yes. How important is it, Dylan, for consistent sunlight?
That's one of the biggest challenges with canopy management, and that's what we do. That's the biggest heavy lifter that we do out there in the vineyard, is maintaining canopy exposure, not making it or letting it get too large where it's just unruly for tractor entrance or people to go about doing canopy management. So the biggest challenge we have with canopy and trying to keep them all in line for the best sun exposure is just keeping an eye on how much vigor they have, and really that comes down to pruning. And based on your pruning, that's really going to dictate what kind of canopy you're going to have.
And how big is the trellising aspect, and what type of trellising system you use in the canopy management?
It's huge. It's like buying a car. This is a really big expense that you're going to be going into, and you've got to go all in, and you got to be looking at it from the standpoint that, okay, if we're doing it this way, if this is the way we're planning on pruning, or if this is the way that we're planning on going with production, you really have to be cognizant of what style of wire we're using, how many clips are we putting in, are we going to be machine harvesting it? Are we going to be hand picking it? What's our tractor access like? So not only with just the physicality of doing tractors, but also with grow points. How long of canes are we hanging? What root stocks and clones are we putting out there that can handle that amount of growth? Those kinds of things are huge aspects when it comes to selecting trellis and how it affects the grapevines.
Yeah, that I would imagine is also a learning curve, and especially as the vineyard matures. And then Hannah, with regards to, these guys get to see the efforts of their work almost immediately because they're working with the vine as it's growing. You have to get stuff off the vine and nurse it around or nurse it along for multiple years. So walk us through kind of when the grapes come in, it's chaos for you until when, and what is that process?
When the grapes come in, crush is busy, you've got to get your crush ads in and make, do any types of adjustments. And then fermentation is really important. Cap management's really important, especially with Cabernet, well, any red wine, but our family grows Cab. So you're really going through tasting the ferments all the way through, and then deciding when you're going to have your pick date. And that's kind of press date. And that's kind of like a stylistic choice on tannin extraction and what you're going for and what you want your end game to be. And then once you've decided, okay, we're getting there, it seems like we've got the phenolics that we're looking for our style, into the press it goes. And then that comes the next set of kind of tasting and evaluating for your stylistic preference. How far do you want, how much pressure do you want to have on that must? to further extract any phenolics. And that's fun because we get to do that as a family. I bring them into the winery, and so we go through and we taste along together. And I tend to press off a little sweeter, not completely dry. That's a stylistic thing that I prefer. I look for wines that have really elegant tannins, kind of those longer chain, not so astringent, not so bitter. And you can do that by pressing off the skins a little bit earlier than when they're completely dry. Once it's pressed off, then it goes into barrel, and then you're looking at your secondary fermentation, your malolactic fermentation. And that actually this year has gone by really quickly, which has been great. So once you're gone through malolactic, you see that that's also dry. Then comes kind of the resting easy point. You'll rack off of your growth solids, your bulk solids, these. You'll add your SO2, back to barrel they go, keep them topped, keep them happy, and now they're ready to age until your next racking, which can be 6 to 8 months, 8 months to a year, kind of depending on how the wine is responding to the aging process and the oak that you've got it in.
And I'm going to ask about 8 questions based upon what you just said.
Okay.
So I understand, determining when the pick is going to be, and then everybody, it's all hands, and you bring all the fruit in and you crush in the fermentation. And you said something about the fermentation and the wines that you like to make. And you said it all depends upon what you want out of it. And what you want out of it, I think I heard you say, is more color extraction, softer tannins. But you're on Howell Mountain, which is known for, extremely tannic wines in some areas. So A, how do you balance those tannins? And then B, from fermentation to barrel, what are we looking at in number of days?
Okay, well, the days of fermentation would be more of a temperature thing and not something that you can necessarily keep limited to. You don't want to have a rip roaring hot fermentation. That's going to just blow through it, and you're going to extract, but you're going to extract really fast. And you really want to have more of a steady kind of, maybe, 12 to 14 day fermentation would be an ideal temperature kind of timing wise. And then, the thing about having fruit off of Howell Mountain is that, yes, there are tannins there, and I don't have to be afraid about not getting enough of them, but it's about balancing them. So one of the things that I mentioned that was really important in kind of making sure that you're getting the tannin extraction that you want, but not over extracting, is cap management. And so that has to do with how many punch downs or pump overs that you're going to have your wine go through, not only how frequently, but how long. And then you do change them up as the wine becomes as you get more alcohol, you have more extraction that's happening just naturally from the solvent of the alcohol. So while at the beginning you do these really big ones, you're getting that color, there's not a lot of alcohol, and you're really just aggressively doing longer pump overs or punch downs. And then as you get towards the end of fermentation, you're really scaling those back to where you're doing a really quick pump over, just wetting the cap, or a really quick punch down.
How do you know you're getting to the end of fermentation?
Well, you're tracking bricks. So not only
so
are
you're
you
tracking
tasting,
sugar content, right?
Yeah. So not only are you tracking the sugar content, but you're also tasting it. And so you've started the wine from the juice phase, and every day you're out there and you're seeing more and more phenolic tannic development, color extraction, and you kind of start predicting where it's going. You can see, okay, if we keep on this regimen, we're going to over extract. So now's our time to cut it back a little bit. Do a shorter pump over, do less frequent pump overs, do less frequent punch downs. And so it's a lot of kind of a balancing act of that, and then choosing your press date when you're going to press off of those skins. And I like to do it a little bit earlier than when they're completely dry, and that's just kind of my preference.
And then are you able to tell in the cluster formation the amount of clusters per vine and what type of juice you have, whether or not that was a result of low amount of water in a drought year?
Who's that to?
Yeah.
That was Hannah from a winemaking standpoint.
So are you saying cluster weight? Is that what you're asking? Or are you talking berry size?
Cluster weight, berry size. I mean, when you're walking the vines and you're in the July, August timeframe and you're looking at cluster formation and everything, and you realize, okay, this drought is definitely, the vines aren't producing as many clusters, or the clusters aren't as, the berry size is different. When do you start knowing that?
Well,
In the
actually,
growing season?
I'm gonna tip this over to him because he's actually got a really cool little, really early on in the season trick about how many seeds the berries have, and it's held true every year for us. So I'm gonna loft this one over to him because I think it's pretty cool.
Oh, well, okay, that's a seed trick, but we're gonna go back to tannins, and this needs to be out there for all you cab people out there, whatever wine you like. Part of tannins is clonal. You select the clones of Cabernet or Zinfandel, whatever you're planting. Those can have a big swing in how elegant the tannins are. So we selected some French clones of Cabernet that were known for long chain, elegant, velvety tannins. Why did we do that? Because those are the wines I liked. So yeah, so that's part of it and also you canopy manage your fruit temperatures. If your fruit gets too hot, it tends to make the tannins more short chain and more stringent or more harsh. So you manage your canopy temperatures, your fruit temperatures, and then and through clonal selection, you can kind of give yourself a leg up for this velvety. They're there, and you rinse that wine in your mouth, and boy, they will punch back because there was a lot of tannins in it. But through the managing it in the getting your clonal selection and managing your fruit temperatures, and then giving it to a great winemaker who's going to do those things to kind of take what's there and let it express itself. That's how that's done. The seed test is basically this. It's basically this. I learned this from a guy named Dick Stelzner. He had Stelzner Winery there on Silverado Trail Farm. Had that since the 70s. And then I believe that his family has sold and has moved on to another proprietor. But I was sitting there having lunch with him. It consisted of French bread with blue cheese smeared on it and a bottle of wine. And we were talking about how do we gauge bunch weights, and I was talking about that. And I'll always credit him for this. He goes, Bryan, it's easy as this: count seeds. If a grapevine can have 1 to 4 seeds. If you're averaging 1 to 2 seeds, your bunch weights are light. If you're averaging 2 to 3, you're in the middle. If you're averaging 4 seeds, then your bunch weights are going to be heavy, because in order to have fit 4 seeds, the berries are bigger and the seeds weigh. So we go through and count seeds, and we'll know whether our bunch weights are going to be on the light side, or they're going to be about average, or they're going to be heavy. And so I will credit Dick Stelzner with that.
Very cool. And I want to get back to the drilling of the well on psychedelics.
Okay.
How deep is the well?
The well is 400 feet.
Okay. And do you know, could the well go dry?
It could. We have more than one well now. We have 3. We have 3 wells, and we have a huge spring. The house runs off of this spring water. For a dry parcel that was supposed to be a dry parcel, we now have 3 wells. One is over 100 gallons a minute. It's hundreds of gallons a minute. And we have this spring that runs, and so our house runs off of spring water. And
wow.
It's wonderful water. It really is. It really is. So yes, there is a lot of water there. There's plenty of water, and we designed our vineyard to use as little as possible. And that's how we manage the grapes, with temperature.
And the insulating jacket on the fermentation tank, that's probably filled with water?
No, that's glycol.
Glycol.
Yeah.
Chemical. Okay, yeah, that's right. Whew. I'm just worried about all the water usage.
That's the one part of the winery that doesn't use water.
Or the employees.
Yeah.
So all of you, I'd be curious, what are your viewpoints on the drought and water shortage that you're currently experiencing, but also at a macro level that people are talking about is, you know, the next global or certainly United States domestic concern?
Well,
I'll start with Bryan.
okay. So luckily, wine grapes, when you look at an agricultural crop, we can use maybe a 1/4 acre foot to a 1/2 acre foot per acre. And that's very low for a crop. You know, say almonds will use 3 to 4 feet. Vegetables will use 2 and 3 feet, acre feet a year. So wine grapes are way down on the water use scale. So we have a crop that's kind of built for it.
Mhm.
And although I will say there's some the people have planted in areas where they're on these very rocky soils and they didn't put the right rootstocks in, that they are having to irrigate more. But I think as an industry, we've learned drought tolerance, make your vineyards as drought tolerant as you possibly can, irrigate only when you need to. So as an industry, I think we're in pretty good shape, but
Good.
who knows what's going to happen.
Well, and then you also specifically talk about in measuring moisture at the vine level. I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, good, we got 1.25 inches of rain last night in February when we needed it and it can fill up everything. But you guys also have some pretty neat science technology out in the vineyards that talk to me a little bit about how you're measuring moisture and precipitation and stuff at the vine. Who wants that one?
Is that me again? That's me again. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yes. So, all right. So this is geeky, sir. Drink wine. Everyone drink some wine. You drink some wine.
Actually, just talk to the crowd. I'm going to go get a sandwich.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we actually measure leaf temperatures in real time. Every 15 minutes, we take a measurement. We measure 8 vines in a row. We measure what we call the morning sun side and the afternoon sun side separately. And we make a calculation. Boy, this is going to get deep. We look at
Wait,
temperature.
but let me just dumb it down for myself. You
Okay.
measure both. You measure the temperature of both sides of the leaf every 15 minutes.
Yes, and why do you do that? Because grapevines are
Free
crawlers.
time?
Yeah, no, grapevines are crawlers, and they are unique this way. They were built to grow up the canopy, get up on top of the trees and bushes, and get sunlight. And when they run out of water, they shut these leaves off, and they transpire. With the atmosphere in the shade. So they shut off the leaves that get hot, and they work and they do their work, their physiological work in the leaves that are in the shade. And I learned that years and years ago about trying to figure out how vines did what they do. So if you're going to accurately measure the temperature of a grapevine, you have to measure the ones that are on the shady side separate from the ones that are in the sun, because they will heat these up to make an umbrella to allow themselves to do work. So you have to understand how hot the umbrella is getting and how hot the working leaves are getting to understand when you need to irrigate them. I know that seems like a lot of work, but really this is our main tool for quality is water applications and what our canopies do and how hot our fruit gets. That is where the wine industry lives right now.
Well, and how are you measuring both sides of the leaf every 15 minutes? What is the
sensors? We have infrared sensors that we put out there on the other side of the leaf, and yeah, it pings them, measures it, and we average that side, we average this side, and then we look at humidity inside the canopy as well, and then we come up with something called vapor pressure deficit, which is how hot it is and how dry it is, and that tells us how hard the atmosphere is pulling on our grapevines. And if they go over a certain threshold of, and this will be your next quiz question, 4.3 kilopascals. That is our threshold to where you're at risk of having your canopy temperatures and fruit temperatures go too high.
And so what happens when they go too high?
They shut down.
They stop transpiring, and you're prone to dehydration. Because this idea that you put the vines under stress and you leave them under stress, yeah, to a point, but then if the fruit starts to cook and the leaves start to cook, you're not doing any good. The vines are not physiologically active. So, and I'll leave it at that.
No, I mean, it makes, I mean, it's fascinating that you can measure it every 15 minutes with infrared. And I just have this picture of Dylan sitting on the couch watching the football game, looking at his smartphone and measuring vines and watering and no?
Pickup truck.
Yeah.
Pickup truck, checking leaf, the VPD.
Yeah, but we do, when the heat spikes come, you're darn right, we're flipping from field to field, looking at where the peaks are. And how high that those numbers are getting, and whether we've done our job in cooling them.
And how do you cool them? Just with the irrigation?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, with the irrigation.
Uh-huh.
And how many other vineyards do it like this?
Not very many right now. Maybe about, we have about 50 of those units out now. This is technology that we brought out into the industry, and we have about 50 units out, and we're expanding that network as time allows. As the equipment, the cost of equipment has come down to where things like that can be done. It's part of our geekism.
Is it like another bass boat?
Yeah, no, not that expensive at all.
Okay.
No, we're not bass boat expensive. I would say the units cost a few $1,000
Wow,
and then you got
nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
You get
No,
6 of those at a time at Costco.
Yeah, but that's how hard we're looking into this drought thing, and how hard we're looking at managing our vineyards. Is we know water's our throttle, and the better we get at that throttle, and only putting on the water when we absolutely need to do it. But when they need it, because we had some heat spikes in Napa Valley where we had some real detrimental things happen to fruit quality. And so now we measure it, and we can identify when those things happen, and when we succeed and when we fail.
And so, I mean, I'm struggling with people that then dry irrigate or dry farm rather.
Dry farming is a nice way of saying they don't have water.
Well, yeah,
But if they don't have water and they're still growing vineyards, it must just be white
soil
knuckle.
related. Yeah, it's soil related. So they must have something that's under the ground that's being able to their available water holding capacity based off of the soil type that's there for those grapevines is able to hold water a little longer. So that's one of the key ways people can dry farm is basically utilizing the soils that they have and just praying for rain and hoping that their soil is able to hold on to it long enough.
And so, Bryan, that's where you, from a soil mapping perspective, have to have heart-to-hearts with the owners, because we hear it all the time at Cellar Angels, the winemaker or the vineyard talking about their soils. Oh, I've got sandy loam, I've got volcanic, I've got 18 inches of topsoil, then I have got a clay layer, then I've got some slate, everything is all about the soils. They may or may not know what they're talking about, because to your point, the soil could be one thing, but if it's doesn't have the ability to be paired with the right rootstock, if it doesn't have the moisture capacity and moisture holding capacity, it really doesn't matter what your soils are if you are going to screw everything up afterwards and putting vines in the ground.
Yep.
Yes, the short answer is yes, absolutely. So Dylan, what type of soil would you have if you dry farm?
Well, if you dry farm, you want something that has a loam character to it with clay kind of down low, something that will able to hold a lot of water inside of it, that kind of thing. And depending on your soils that are out there, if you have high clays or anything along those lines, you could go 1616C, you could go SO4, all these very different types of rootstocks that I'm sure many people don't know the numbers, but it's important to us. It's what we do.
Yes. So you'd have a deep soil. You have a big deep soil, and it would hold a lot of water, and the grapevines can just have a bigger water jug, so they can get by easier than these people that put something on a rock pile.
Mm-hmm.
And Hannah, I'm enjoying the rosé.
Thank you.
And you were not present. You were not present when I told the other folks, I am not enjoying the font size as an old man.
I have a lot of words and not a lot of space to put them on.
Yes,
So let's, I mean, the rosé has got awesome color. Why don't you describe why you wanted to make a rosé first, what you're after stylistically in a rosé, and then give me the aromas, flavors, and stuff that you have on this and what you like to pair it with.
Okay, I think as a family, we kind of decided that we needed to have a white wine, rosé style, just something completely polar opposite from Cabernet to help diversify the portfolio. Yeah, so we got that going for us. Sorry, I've got a bit of pregnancy brain.
So when are you due, honey?
January, so I'm really close.
Hey.
Can you remind me the second question?
The second question was, how long have you had pregnancy brain?
Really bad, like maybe the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, and this is from the woman who knows everything. Okay, so the fact that she's saying that is amazing.
No, that's good. No, so were you after a French rosé style, a fruitier rosé style, a dry rosé style?
That's right.
What were you
You're
looking
going
for?
on style. So I actually was just kind of going off of what I like to drink, which I like dry wines anytime. I like wines that you can drink with or without food. And I like rosés to have like a nice balanced acidity. And you can get that by choosing to put your white wines through malolactic fermentation or through a partial malolactic fermentation. And I think that was a big factor in deciding the style for this rosé. It actually did go all the way through malolactic fermentation, and I decided that as I was tasting it as it was going. So the malolactic fermentation is that conversion of malic acid to lactic acid. I kind of describe that as biting into an apple versus drinking milk, malic acid in apple, lactose milk, just those different kind of mouthfeels.
More pregnancy references. I get it.
Yeah. I'm thinking food.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the style that we were targeting for this rosé.
Yeah. And
when you say I let it go all the way through mallow, can you stop malolactic fermentation midway through, and then what happens there, or how is this decision made?
So there's actually a couple different ways that you can have a partial malolactic fermentation. One of them is you immediately after primary fermentation or that alcoholic fermentation, you can SO2, which would inhibit malolactic fermentation, 30% of your barrels, and then inoculate the other 70%. That's if you kind of have some larger lots. And then the other way that you can kind of do it is through tracking it, where you inoculate everything, all of the barrels that you have, and taste as it goes. And it can be anywhere from 30 to 70% done. And you kind of decide based on how the mouthfeel has progressed, whether or not you want to keep going or not.
Interesting.
I will say a lot of her recipe about what I hear, and I know happens all the time. She watches the wine, she tastes the wine she's after it. Basically, she pays attention to what's going on. She's not having writing work orders and having people do it. Trust me, she's following up like you wouldn't believe, and tasting through things and watching them all the way through fermentation. And then we talk about the style and stuff. Well, the style is going to be, every vintage is different, and Zeppelin's definitely at the wheel.
Yeah.
and that would be this one here.
At least until January.
Yeah. We'll take a little time off and then get back in it.
Yeah, exactly. So next harvest. So we got a while.
So what is the base wine of the rosé?
So this is from a vineyard that my dad and brother actually manage. So this is a Merlot. It's as we grow our program, I would love to do like a Saunier type thing off of our fruit. But this was a Saunier done off of some Merlot that they farmed. Saunier is the French term meaning to bleed, which is when you pull the juice off of the skins early on so that you don't extract too much color, and you ferment it separately. And so that's what this rosé is. It just made sense logistically for us to get the program going on the rosé front, to do it this way.
And this is the 2020 rosé. Is it your first vintage or?
First vintage of rosé ever.
Wow, I like it. I like it. Talk to us about the entire portfolio. What do we have now?
Well, we've still got our Grenache Mourvedre that was farmed over in the San Francisco Bay appellation. We've got Zinfandel, and then coming down the pipeline soon is going to be our 2019 Cabernet That's getting ready to be bottled coming up here in February. And I've been anxiously waiting to get this one out to everybody. I'm really excited about it. It's kind of going to be our new release in quite a long time, and it's tasting so great, and we're so excited about it. So I'm looking forward to that. And then, you know, we've diversified and we've got this rosé going. And if I'm dreaming down the road, we've got some property out in Berryessa. I would love to put some more out by Berryessa. I don't know if people know that area.
It's a large lake in
Yeah.
eastern Napa County.
And I love to do some warm weather whites out there, do something fun. Everybody has a Sauvignon Blanc, but I want to see like a Roussan, maybe Viognier, maybe a little Semillon out there. Just kind of do like a really crazy, wacky white blend.
Yeah, or Grenache Blanc.
Interesting.
maybe.
Grenache Blanc.
Grenache Blanc. And we want to use Grenache Mourvedre again.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong. You purchased this property because of its picture perfect soil type and profile for Cabernet Sauvignon.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
the 2019 Hannah is I mean, the Cabernet is your flagship. I just marvel at the fact that you said, okay, I'm buying this land because this is perfect soil for Cabernet. And it's on Howell Mountain. I mean, that takes some insight, that takes some persistence, some tenacity, and the Cabernet, if you haven't had the Rahn Cabernet, you are missing out, because it is something to behold. And unlike a lot of the Cabernets off of Howell, you can drink this fairly close to release. I mean, you don't have to lay it down for 20 years, and that's a testament to Hannah. So Hannah actually just said, I don't know if they know where Berryessa is, and I can't believe Greasy didn't pick up on this, but Google Earth, where have I been? Okay, for those of you new to the edutainment on Friday night, you recognize that photo that I took earlier. This is the only place that Cellar Angels plays, Napa and Sonoma. So this is our wine region. It is, as Brian said, it is a Mediterranean climate. There's only 2 to 3% of the world that falls into that climate definition. Very cool, are very dry summers, warm, rainy winters that are wet and with westerly breezes. So of course the Mediterranean, you have that. Italy, the entire country is a Mediterranean climate, but not so much in the United States, just 3% of the world. And it's interesting because here you have the San Pablo Bay, you have the Pacific Ocean, you have tons of tributaries. And what's this area over here? Berryessa, Lake Berryessa. Now, where is this lovely estate? Hold your seatbelts.
No.
Zoom in.
So now I find it interesting that you're on this. Where's my map? So this is coming, I'm looking south, sort of.
Sort of.
So this is east over here. So this is kind of eastward facing slopes.
Yeah, northeastern facing slopes. And what that gives us is hang time.
And why is that?
Well, because we used to covet the southwest slopes because you got all the sunshine and the heat. And then when we learned about the fruit temperature management and managing your fruit temperature, we realized that the northern slopes were cooler. And when you had a really hot day and they would get in the shade quicker and cool themselves. So it allowed us, it makes you harvest later, but trust me, the long chain tannins are worth it.
And okay, that's impressive. And so how did you test this soil, Brian, before purchasing?
Yeah, well, how did I test it?
Yeah, because it wasn't a vineyard, was it? I mean,
no, it was not. No,
don't people place phone calls when someone's getting out of a pickup truck and digging dirt in the soil and just it's not his land?
Well, unless he's some skinny soil scientist out there with a hand soil auger digging all over the place, you know, I don't think they could see me because there were some bushes and stuff around, and I was out there with my hand soil auger digging down, and it was just gravelly loam, just you know, volcanic gravelly loam. And people tell me what their soils are. Trust me, I know, I'm a soil scientist. It's beautiful.
And just to give people some orientation, you know, we're on the north end of the valley here. So here's St. Helena, Rutherford's down here, and you go all the way down valley to Napa. just to give you an idea of where the estate is on Howell Mountain. And how can people come to the valley and taste with you?
Well, we're working on that. We're establishing a tasting room, so that will be open soon. If people get in the valley and they say, oh, we saw you on the Cellar Angels, yeah, we can hike you around a vineyard tour and show you what we're doing. But I will tell you, bring some oxygen and some walking some walking shoes, because it is quite hilly. But we walk through it every day. Sometimes twice, at least once a day. Sometimes twice a day. We hike that property to look at it, and it's great. It's forest, it's vineyard, it's cool beans.
Well, and it's interesting because people ask us often, until they get to know Cellar Angels in the portfolio, they're like, well, why is the limited production wineries, how are they different? And I think you've heard about a dozen examples tonight about how these small family producers are different. First of all, you've got people that are measuring with infrared temperature gauges both sides of a grapevine leaf every 15 minutes. You have multiple picks occurring. So you're not just picking once, because I can imagine when the wineries that do pick once, you're going to get a lot of underripe grapes. You're going to get a lot of overripe pruny grapes. So you have multiple picks. You also have the entire soil mapping component, to where when the soil chemistry and the soils are changing, you put in a different rootstock to maximize the potential output and vigor of that rootstock or that vine. Then you've got Dylan, who's got to manage all this and take it. And then he also has to work with his sister, which we all know challenges in that. Which I think is, again, getting back to the magic of that, that is something really, really special. So I congratulate you guys on all that you're accomplishing and all that you're doing, and basically living your dream. It sounds and tastes fantastic. So thank you for all the effort. Cheers to you.
Cheers. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And who's not here is Andrea, our camera shy matriarch that keeps us all in line and keeps us all moving, and keeps me from just driving the truck off the side of the road. So yes, unfortunately she couldn't be here, although she did bake some fantastic molasses crinkles, which is one of my favorite cookies. It's like a ginger snap that's soft and chewy, to die for. But she was in the middle of that, and I couldn't drag her out of the baking to be over here. And so, but we miss her. Love you, honey. Hopefully next time you'll be here sitting next to me, keeping me in line.
I like it. This is perfect, because you guys to us are heroes, and people think hero is, someone that kills bad guys, dresses a cape and stuff like that. And not at all. A hero, actually, if you look at the Greek etymological definition of it, a hero is a protector. You guys are actually protectors of the land. You're protectors of the grapevines. You're protectors of this wonderful passion and hobby and career and job. And to all the Cellar Angels loyalists and the supporters that are drinking this wine, you guys are also heroes, because you're helping them do what they do. And so I'm going to raise a glass to the family and to all of the Cellar Angel supporters. So you guys are awesome. Thanks for being heroes to us. The birthday announcements include none other than Ivy, who is behind the video screen tonight. So Ivy's birthday is tomorrow. Happy birthday, Ivy. Also, Sean Manning, Payroll Vault, his birthday. There he is right there in the lower left-hand corner of my screen, next to Paul Lynn, who usually occupies the center square on what's the name of that show? Oh, Hollywood Squares.
Hollywood Squares.
Right, good. Thank you. Look, Dylan and Hannah are like, I have no idea what that program is. Every week we have the chance to do something that inspires us, that we hope you're proud of. And actually, we hope it moves you, and we hope you tell others, because there's a lot of room in the Cellar Angels tent to drink great wine from people like you saw tonight. So with that, I'm going to bid you all adieu. Next week, we are taking this show on the road. We are going to be in Denver. Might recognize the view in the Manning household, because hopefully we'll have better lighting. But we will be there next Friday night, coming to you live from Colorado with Davis Estates. That's all I've got. Stay safe, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, a better weekend. Thanks so much for all your support. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.